Steve?
Yeah, we just got some vote from Philadelphia. It was a small update, 2,700 votes, but Joe Biden won like 2,400 of them, and you can see what that's done. His statewide lead in Pennsylvania, just on this small update from Philadelphia, has now broken the 30,000 vote mark, is nearly 31,000 votes. Joe Biden now leads Donald Trump in Pennsylvania by 30,908 votes. Again, I think this is, Maura had been saying, a small update coming from Philadelphia. This is what they were talking about here. It looks like about 2,700, about 2,800 votes just came in from Philadelphia. Biden winning 2,431 of them. So again, just that pace of overwhelmingly the mail ballots, especially in Philadelphia, going for Joe Biden. And again, they have more to come. This is just a perfect example of what we're talking about. We have long delays between these vote updates. We have a big pool of votes left to come. But every time we get these small incremental updates, they continue to be overwhelmingly for Biden, each one increasing his lead statewide. 2,000 votes here, 3,000 votes there, 4,000 votes there, and it sits now at 31,000, basically.
Well, and once again, with the latest batch that came in from Philadelphia, we once again have Joe Biden winning almost 9 out of 10 votes in that batch. And that's been consistent with everything we've seen over the past 3 days. And I suspect that will continue as we move forward throughout the day. John Meacham, let me bring you in right now because judging by what the news agencies have said, what the networks have said, what newspapers have said about calling this race, you just get the feeling that with Allegheny coming with votes that are most likely going to be disproportionately breaking in Joe Biden's favor, and then the Philly votes coming in piecemeal, where Joe Biden's getting 90%. Okay, we have an announcement to make. Joe Biden is president-elect of the United States. Biden is being called with the Pennsylvania votes that have just come in. Biden has been elected, Mika, and tell us about it.
Well, the president-elect of the United States, Joe Biden, has run for president 3 times, and the 3rd time has turned out to be the charm. Not only the charm, but possibly the most consequential election of our lifetimes. He is 77 years old. He was born in Scranton, Pennsylvania, but calls Wilmington, Delaware, his home. At the age of 29, Joe Biden became one of the youngest people ever elected to the U.S. Senate, and that is where he stayed for decades. Even, quite frankly, through tremendous tragedy that has struck his life. He has been witness and a part of some major moments in American history during his time as vice president of the United States under Barack Obama, and that is the passage of the Affordable Care Act, and health care remains his top priority.
And Willie, as we talk about this election, this race, we looked at Joe Biden in the eyes when we were in New Hampshire. He knew he was going to lose that race badly in the Democratic primary, just like he had been embarrassed in Iowa. And I must say, it was one of the few times I've been around Joe Biden in my life where when he sat down, I had nothing to say to him. It was a moment where you could tell Joe Biden knew that he was hanging by a very thin thread in that race. He knew he had to perform well the next week in Nevada. He came in second. That was good enough to buy him a ticket to South Carolina. And then, Willie, I must say, what happened over the next week in South Carolina? What happened when Jim Clyburn endorsed him? What happened when black voters, especially women black voters across the state of South Carolina, came out en masse to support his candidacy? Joe Biden was on his way. And while a lot of people will be focusing on the last few weeks of this campaign, we must say, and we said it at the time, we'll say it now, few of us have ever seen a candidacy turn around as quickly as Joe Biden's did over the next week or two. He went from being a man who's presumed to be a 3- or 4-time loser to a man who was rocketing towards a Democratic nomination. Now he is going to be the 46th president of the United States.
An extraordinary election in so many ways, not the least of which is that it was conducted in the middle of a pandemic, a campaign unlike we've ever seen before. And Joe, you're right. I go back to that day in New Hampshire, February 11th, the day of the New Hampshire primary. Joe Biden had finished 4th in Iowa. That night, he would finish 5th in New Hampshire. And our interview with him, the time we spent with him as we were preparing to interview, felt like a political wake. And if you go back and talk honestly to people around him, the mood was low. They didn't see a path forward. And then here comes South Carolina. Congressman Jim Clyburn makes his endorsement, and African-American voters, by and large, step in to effectively save Joe Biden's campaign in late February. And now here we are on this Saturday, yes, 3 or 4 days after Election Day at this point, but now we can say NBC News declares Joe Biden is president-elect of the United States of America.
And Mika, this breaking news from the BBC as well. Following NBC News' lead, the BBC is projecting Joe Biden has won the presidential election. The BBC projects that he secured enough Electoral College votes to defeat Donald Trump.
And as we give this context and talk about Joe Biden's incredible path to victory, it would be amiss not to mention that right now we are also in another moment of incredible transition in history, where we are going to be witnessing the first woman vice president of the United States.
Speaking of history, let's bring in John Meacham, a Pulitzer Prize-winning presidential historian. John Meacham, this has been an extraordinary presidential race. It has been an extraordinary year. And forgive me for being Pollyannish. I was saying this before the call. I'll say it now. The fact that as many Americans were involved in this race, in this campaign as they were, in the age of COVID is remarkable. Yes, Joe Biden got more votes than any person who has ever run for president of the United States. Second place, Donald J. Trump. This election has been won for the ages.
Close elections produce consequential presidencies. This is, I think, on a par with 1860, 1864, 1932, 1960, 1980, 2008. This is a moment where the country had to make a decision whether we would follow reason or whether we would continue to only be engaged in partisan passion. That does not mean that partisan passion is going away. There's an enormous amount of work ahead. But when historians look back, when citizens look back on this moment, it may well be that this was the beginning of the end of an era of perpetual partisan warfare. And a lot of that will be determined by the character of the person we've just elected president of the United States. Character is destiny.
Yep.
The Greeks taught us that. And Joe Biden's character is such that it may well be that man and moment were made for each other.
And you talk about man and moment being made for each other. I know there are a lot of people who are disappointed on both sides that a Democrat has been elected president and that it looks like Republicans will maintain control of the Senate. But we actually have people that are going to be running Washington, D.C. that actually knows how Washington, D.C. works and have been complaining for some time that we continue electing people to Washington, D.C. of both parties who are outsiders who don't know how to make Washington, D.C. work. But as you talk about the character of the president, the president-elect, I go back to Richard Ben Cramer and his remarkable stories about Joe Biden. And I'm reading here about how Joe Biden was supposed to be on the operating table for 4 hours. He ended up being on the table for 9 hours when there was surgery on him. And
for a brain aneurysm.
For a brain aneurysm. And the timing, the doctor said, was appropriate. And TJ, if we could show some pictures of Joe Biden here as the next president of the United States. But the timing was appropriate. And what he meant was they weren't a minute too soon. In fact, the moment they cut into Biden's head, maybe it was just a godly coincidence, the aneurysm burst like a gusher. Biden was lucky. The artery burst outward toward the wall of his skull. If it had gone the other way, of course, Joe Biden would not have survived. And there were so many times in Joe Biden's life where he was dealt one tragic blow after another. Of course, the passing of his wife and his daughter in a tragic accident, Mika. And then this, finding out that he had a brain aneurysm, but also believing that he was guided by God towards a larger destiny. And that's what he said after his failure in the 1988 presidential campaign. He could not understand why he had come up short, why things had gone so badly. And then his wife, Jill, Joe Biden, Val, and all of those close to Joe Biden understood if he had had the brain aneurysm while campaigning, he would not have come home and he would have been dead. When he woke up from that surgery, Mika, he said he understood why he had lost that race so badly. He believed that God still had a plan for his life. And here we are, 40 years later, Joe Biden is going to be the 46th president of the United States.
You talk about that brain aneurysm and that moment, that bedside moment when he told his sons that he didn't need to see them grow into men because he was proud of them. You think it would end there in terms of tragedy, but then there is Beau Biden. Beau Biden, who served as Delaware's Attorney General after returning home from Iraq, where he served as a captain with the Delaware National Guard. Beau Biden died of brain cancer. And Joe Biden always talks about health care being personal to him because it is. But it brings out something else that has struck me about not just Joe Biden, but Joe and Jill Biden, and knowing them over the years. Joe Biden received the first Brzezinski Award after the passing of my father for a million reasons. But the one I look to is how grounded they are. When you meet Joe and Jill Biden, you do not look at them and hear the sounds and sights, see the sights of people who are creatures of Washington. You see Scranton, you see Wilmington, you see people that are just like you and me, and that's everybody. They are people that never got changed by Washington and grounded by that hardship. Instead of broken by it, grounded by it, and God bless them, they want to go back to Washington after serving there for decades and then those 8 years serving under President Barack Obama. A lot of people after something like that, they just want to go home. They just want to get a break. No, Joe Biden wants to go back and serve.
More news outlets now calling this race, saying it is over. The Washington Post declaring right now, Joe Biden projected to be the nation's 46th president, elected to lead a divided country amid a deadly pandemic. And Willie, talking about Beau Biden, Beau is a friend of our show, like many Democrats, many Republicans. He came on the show many times. We always loved him, always respected him, was surprised that he didn't run himself to be senator of Delaware. He could have won that, but he decided to stay where he was because he was committed to the people of Delaware. I remember talking to Joe Biden. He was on the show earlier this year with us, and we asked him if he thought about Beau every day. And he teared up, and he told us that, in fact, it was Beau he was running for. It was Beau who was on his shoulder every day, pushing him forward. And as the young boy that was in the front seat of that ambulance, racing down to Walter Reed Hospital in the middle of a snowstorm when his father was dying, it made all the sense in the world that it was Beau pushing him forward, because Beau didn't want him to get out of the '88 race. Beau wanted him to keep going. Beau wanted him to keep fighting. And let's just tell it like it is. Most Democrats in the Democratic establishment at the start of this process had very few kind words to say about Joe Biden's candidacy. They thought he was too old. They thought he was too shaken up by losing Bo.
They thought he hugged
life,
too much.
They thought life had delivered too many hard blows to him. They didn't think that he could win the Democratic nomination and beat Donald Trump. But time and time again over the past year, Joe Biden has exceeded expectations.
Yeah, I think lost in the failures of the Trump administration and Donald Trump so controlling the airspace and the stage during this campaign is that Joe Biden and his team ran an excellent campaign. Now, it was a different campaign because we're in the middle of a pandemic. He didn't do the events he would normally do. He didn't work rope lines the way he normally would. But he resisted some of the tug left that he was encouraged by some to visit positions that may have hurt him. He was told that if you want to take this back, the central mission is to control the upper Midwest, get back those states that Hillary Clinton lost to Donald Trump. Mission accomplished in Wisconsin and Michigan, and now we can say in the state of Pennsylvania. He grabbed back the 3 states, and he may not be done yet with, as you can see on that map, Nevada, Arizona, Georgia, North Carolina, and Alaska still outstanding. But, Joe, back to your point about Beau Biden, there was an incredibly moving moment, and we took it live on Tuesday on Election Day. Joe Biden visited St. Joseph's on the Brandywine, the Roman Catholic church he's attended for a long time in Wilmington, Delaware, and where his children are buried. And to go in and to say a prayer and to visit the graves of your children on the day that you hope you may be elected President of the United States tells a lot of the story of Joe Biden's life that now culminates in this moment when he is the president-elect and will become the 46th president of the United States of America.
It is every parent's fear to have to bury their child. Joe Biden has had to do it twice, and he's had to bury a wife. And if you ask him how he got through that, he will tell you only his faith in God moved him forward. And with the loss, of course, of Beau, it was Jill, the same Jill Biden that Joe Biden credited with helping him dream again. Let's continue, Willie, through the breaking news. The Wall Street Journal now declaring Joe Biden is elected president of the United States. He pledged, quote, no blue states and no red states, but a united country. The Financial Times, breaking news. Joe Biden wins U.S. election after Pennsylvania triumph. And the New York Times, Joe Biden defeated President Trump and has been elected the President of the United States. He clinched the Electoral College with Pennsylvania. Willie.
Scranton Joe clinches the Electoral College fittingly with Pennsylvania. And an era that began for Donald Trump in politics on an escalator ride down 5.5 years ago now ends on a Saturday where he learned this news at his golf course in Virginia, where he is currently playing. And let us not lose in this what Mika mentioned. Kamala Harris, Senator Kamala Harris, now Vice President-elect, the first woman, the first black woman, the first Indian American woman to hold that position. This is a momentous day in this country on that count. Mike Memoli is standing by for us at Biden campaign headquarters in Wilmington, Delaware. Mike, you've been covering Joe Biden for 13 years, if I have my math right. This is a bit of delayed gratification for the campaign that felt like a couple of days ago they had this wrapped up. But now NBC and other organizations can say it officially, Joe Biden is the president-elect. What's the reaction there?
Well, obviously, just incredible jubilation on the part of the Biden team. They thought we were at this moment yesterday, of course, when Joe Biden took the lead in Pennsylvania. But, of course, the slow pace of results coming in, the lack of a projection from media organizations that he was, in fact, president-elect, put that on hold. But, you know, I've covered Joe Biden a long time. I've heard him very often quote Irish poets, not because he's Irish, as he would say, but because they're the best poets. And there's a particular poem he's very fond of quoting The Cure of Troy by Seamus Heaney, and I want to read a little bit from it because I think it's particularly relevant to this moment. History says, don't hope on this side of the grave, but then once in a lifetime, the longed-for tidal wave of justice can rise up and hope and history rhyme. The delay of yesterday to today means that 48 years to the day that Joe Biden won his very first election to the United States Senate, an upset victory over a popular incumbent Republican, he is now the president-elect of the United States. He does this after winning Pennsylvania, the state where he was born, where he's campaigned more than anywhere else. This happens 5 years, as you've been mentioning, after the loss of his son, Beau. I've talked to it now. I want to call him the former vice president. I'm calling him the president-elect now. Often during the course of this campaign about his son, he said at one point during the campaign in one of our conversations that he just wakes up every day and hopes that Beau is proud of him. He lost his son at the age of 46. Joe Biden will be the 46th president of the United States. It's also interesting to note that he has said often that, and his wife said the same thing to me, Dr. Biden, in an interview, that they thought often during the course of this campaign how they should be campaigning for Beau Biden for president, not for Joe Biden as president. So Joe Biden, when he did lose his son and when he made that decision in late October of 2015 not to enter the 2016 race, there was a sense that, of course, that was the end of the Biden story, that there was his career in public office, at least, was over. But then Donald Trump happened. Joe Biden, perhaps on the eve of the 2016 election, more than other Democrats, sensed that Trump had a better chance of winning than a lot of Democrats wished to believe. And in fact, on the eve of the election, he was campaigning with Tim Kaine. And while Tim Kaine was almost in celebration mode, expecting to become the vice president in what was supposed to be sort of a patching of the torch night, Joe Biden told the crowd, God willing, we're going to win this election, but a lot of folks are going to vote for the other guy. And we have to ask ourselves why. Why is it? Why did we lose this connection with the type of working class voters that Joe Biden has always considered his base? And so when Donald Trump lost, Joe Biden felt that the moment was coming to him. When Donald Trump became president, Joe Biden felt the moment was coming to him. That a lot of Democrats doubted whether he was the right candidate. He and his campaign had unshakable confidence that he could speak in a way that Twitter and many in the progressive base didn't appreciate to the very voters that have now put him in the Oval Office, that blue wall that he helped rebuild, the suburban communities as well. And that's now the triumph of the Biden campaign.
And Mike Memley, you've been there covering every single day of this campaign. We'll let you go back, do some reporting. You can let us know when you expect to see the president-elect. Well, I'm sure we will see him at some point very shortly here. Mika, Fox News also now calling officially this election for Joe Biden.
Okay, thank you, Willie. And to Mike Memley's point about Beau, if there's anything you need to know about Joe Biden, it's this. If Beau Biden could be on that stage right now winning the presidency, Joe Biden would happily step off. It's an incredible moment. His path to victory has been long, arduous, and painful, and decades long, by the way. Let's bring in Claire McCaskill. I know, Claire, there's so much to say about Joe Biden's path to the presidency, but I have to say, as I look up, I think I just heard something, and it was a crack. It was a crack in the ceiling. I think it's worth talking about Kamala Harris at this moment as well. First Black American woman of Indian descent to be the vice president-elect of the United States of America.
First of all, congratulations to America and congratulations to the Biden campaign, who stay focused where they needed to be focused. And sincere congratulations to my friends Joe, and a double congratulations to Kamala. You need to look at her path. This is not somebody who was tapped on the shoulder at a preppy school. This is anything but someone that the other side would call elite. This is someone who went to a historically Black college and university and at Howard and then found her way into the very top levels of our government through intelligence, hard work, balance, listening, and an incredible ability to communicate. She deserves this. She earned this the right way. And it is such a great role model for all women in America. I am so proud of her and Joe Biden for selecting her. And they've got a very difficult job in front of them. But both of them together, I think, have the equipment necessary to navigate a stark reality, Mika. And we can't forget this. Donald Trump is going to be a GOP kingmaker for years to come. He is incredibly popular. He's seen as their hero. And this country is very divided. And I think all of us in my party need to be patient and understand that we've got to try to do a better job of bringing people together, or all we're going to do is sit on the opposite sides of the room and yell at each other.
Well put.
It's a great point, Claire. There are many people who haven't worked in Washington like you who think you can just get your way. James Madison and the Founding Fathers thought otherwise and created a system of checks and balances that require Republicans and Democrats work together. Joe Biden has said he's going to do that. He's going to bring people together. He's going to bring parties together, and he will be president of the entire United States, not just of Democrats, not just for people who voted for him, but for everybody. John Meacham, I'm reminded, Mike Mimley talked about poets and Joe Biden's favorite poets. I'm reminded of when we spoke of Beau Biden's passing after it happened. I quoted Bobby Kennedy from April 4th, 1968, something that you've spoken beautifully about on your podcast. And Kennedy's quote of Aeschylus, his favorite Greek poet. And Joe Biden took this to heart, and it's something we talked about on the show. Aeschylus wrote about 500 years before Christ's birth, "He who learns must suffer, and even in our sleep, pain that cannot forget falls drop by drop upon the heart. And in our own despair, against our will, comes wisdom to us by the awful grace of God." And Joe Biden knows that awful grace better than anyone. But when you see these moments on a campaign trail where he goes up and he hugs somebody who has lost a father or who's lost a child, when he speaks to Gold Star parents, he has that extraordinary connection and that almost superhuman empathy, because he has suffered so much in his life. And he uses that suffering to apply that grace of God to others.
Joe Biden is among the most empathetic men I've ever met, much less public figures, in that he's in the tradition of George Herbert Walker Bush. They both have a personal capacity to put themselves in the other person's shoes. That is a personal virtue. It is also going to be a political virtue that will benefit this country for at least 4 years to come and possibly far beyond. Because the deficit of decency, the deficit of hope, the ascendance of fear, the ascendance of selfishness that we have seen in this country will not totally end with any single election, but a single election can surely help. And what was on the ballot here was decency and democracy and empathy. And Joe Biden is particularly well equipped for this moment. He's not perfect. He'd be the last person on the planet to tell you he was perfect. There are vices, but there are virtues here, and they are deeply human virtues. They are deeply American virtues. And I think it's wonderfully poetic that it was Pennsylvania that has ended what President Ford in another context called our long national nightmare, because it was in Philadelphia that, as Benjamin Franklin left the Constitutional Convention in that fabled story, and an important woman in Philadelphia said, "What will it be, Mr. Franklin? Have you given us a republic or a monarchy?" And he said, "A republic, madam, if you can keep it." The republic is being kept today.
Well said, as always, John Meacham. Let's go back to Steve Kornacki. Steve, we saw that vote come in from Philadelphia, and a couple of seconds after you touched your magic board there, the election was called for Joseph Biden. What did you see there? What came in to put him over the top?
Yeah, well, you know, it was those few thousand votes in Philadelphia. It put him over 30,000. And then actually, literally seconds after that, we had been teeing up